Hey everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here, UnWoke.Academy, and joining me today is my new friend, Vince. Vince, I'm going to ask you to properly pronounce your last name because I'm afraid that I will say it improperly, and I don't want to do that to you.
It's pronounced Cvijanovic.
Cvijanovic.
Yes, and the easy way to say it is Cvijanovic.
Cvijanovic.
Yeah.
That's easy enough.
Yeah.
So welcome, Vince.
Thank you.
I'm delighted to have you. You and I have had some conversations over the last couple of weeks and actually starting online on Twitter about a venture that you've got called Concerned Citizen. Concerned Citizen is your baby, and you've launched that. I want to kick things off by asking you to describe Concerned Citizen and what led you to create it.
Sure. Well, describing it first, what it is, it's a website that I created with the purpose of being a place that people can go to, and more importantly, a place where people that are already knowledgeable can send other people to help people identify sources of news other than what is, mass media. There's a lot of truthful, honest reporters, journalists, news outlets, analysts, writers that are available that are very difficult to find if you look for each one individually, or if you were just to search for honest news. So I've got them aggregated into one website. I've got right now 89 news and journalism websites listed. And then in addition to that, I've got 92 what I call social media influencers and activists listed. Those are people that aren't necessarily journalists, but are, I have found, are individuals that have a strong point of view and certain expertise. So they're listed as a source of information. And then, what I ask people to do in the introduction to the website is find the ones that fit you the best in terms of your personality, your interests, how they write, and how they express themselves. There are some people that are, very aggressive, and some people don't respond well to that. There are others that are very, read between the lines, and some people don't like that. So you find the news sources that you find to be reliable and interesting, and then don't just pick one, pick several. And if you're accustomed to getting news from the main or the corporate media, then compare these sites and what you learn there to the sources you're accustomed to help you build a more complete picture. Because the corporate media is only going to give you what they want you to, they want to manipulate what you think and what you learn. This has been going on for years and years, and it's pretty recognizable, especially once you've had the opportunity to compare other sources of news and so forth. So, don't give up on them necessarily, but compare. Because I think that to have a well-rounded understanding of what's going on, it's good to have more than one source. Then from there, I've got listed 98 organizations, because I believe that that's one of the things that we need in our country is for people, activity among our citizens to get involved in one way or another in helping to direct how our country works, how our society works. And that's done to a great degree through organizations, charitable organizations, non-governmental organizations that are, founded and focused on, broad topics or narrow topics. And all of them need help, need assistance. And of course, they're also sources of information, because all those organizations typically provide a lot of education through seminars, webinars, meetings, events, and so on and so forth. So, and they all need your support. Nobody's going to support them all, but you find, in one place, like if you wanted to find any one of these organizations, you'd have to spend a lot of time looking for them. You might not find them because of the way the search engines work. They, may not list these on the page 1, 2, or 3. But on my website, you can find 90 plus, and that's going to be growing as more people become aware of the website and share organizations with me that I wasn't aware of. And of course, I'm going to vet them, make sure that that they are organizations that are doing meaningful work, not propagandizing. And but I'm sure there's a lot of them that I don't know of. So 90 plus right now, and there'll be more in the future. And then finally, events. Events really is going to drive most of the traffic to the website because things are going on all the time. And one of the things that that I found as part of my awakening as a concerned citizen is that there were events going on that I was interested in, but it seemed like I'd always find out about them after they already happened. So
frustrating.
I couldn't participate in them because they'd already happened. And so I think, and again, looking for events, a lot of the events that I learned about that I did end up attending, you couldn't find them on the internet. You know, I mean, you could find them if you knew the specific name of the event and the host. And a lot of these events and hosts and speakers, I don't know. So I'm not going to find out about them I'm not going to really know about them until I participate in the events. And how would I search for them? So if you go to concernedcitizen.io, you'll be able to find events, and the events are organized by date and zip code, so that if you're looking for events in your zip code, you can find what's been listed there that way. They're linked to Google Maps, so you can see how far away they might be. If you're traveling to another part of the country, like this weekend, I'm traveling to Phoenix, and I wanted to see what events are happening in Phoenix, you know, from Saturday to Tuesday, I could just search by zip code in Phoenix and see what's going on there, and also by date. So that gives people an opportunity to get involved and learn, and also, most importantly, meet other people. I think that the way our society has evolved, we've become very isolated. We've got a lot of opportunities for things to take up our time, you know, entertain us and so on. And we don't get out and interact with other people as often as we probably should. And so the events are an ideal opportunity for people to connect with each other, learn from each other, be inspired by each other. And also, you know, you may find some of these events are educational in the opposite direction. They may not inspire you, but you may learn from there and go, you know, this isn't an organization that I would want to be a part of. And then, of course, you got your right as a citizen to spread that information and let people know that, hey, they say they're this, but they're really that. And then you find out. You know, that's how we spread the information. But ideally, it's going to be people getting together, meeting other folks that have similar interests, and inspiring each other. It's important to know that the website is free. There is nothing that anybody has to pay for. Listings are free. Organization listings are free. Listing events is free. And I'm always available to anybody who wants to get some help navigating the website or adding listings. So I created the website with the intent or the goal of making it much easier for people to find alternative sources of information and news and analysis, organizations and events, with the idea that the more educated people are, the more knowledgeable they are, the more likely they are to be good citizens, to do to challenge people that they've elected, and also get much more involved in the process of getting people elected by knowing what their stances are, what their history is, et cetera. You know, all that information is available. It's really quite amazing how much information is available, and my website can help you get started. It's not the end all, but there's nothing else like concernedcitizen.io on the web right now. And that, to me, that I saw a big void, and I'm trying to fill that void with something that I think can be very useful for people.
Awesome. Well, so as a side note comment, I'm glad that you mentioned getting people out, getting people active, and getting people engaged, because I've learned something here, and I'm going to offer an apology. I learned something about Twitter Spaces moments ago. I'm actually the co-host of a Twitter space on something called Precinct Strategy.
Yeah.
I have something that I want to grab my phone, as it's sort of human instinct these days. Hey, I've got something on my phone. I'm going to reference it with Vince and the audio from that space, which is running currently. I just bowed out of that space. The audio may have intruded there for a moment. So it's not that I was distracted. It's that the Twitter space apparently broadcasts, and there's no way to mute it. So now I know that. Anyway, back to concerned citizens. So a couple of thoughts and questions for you, just for your perspective, because I applaud you this tremendous effort and the work that you're putting into doing this thing. It's an awesome resource and so needed right now for concerned citizens. So my first thought is a question, and that pertains to legacy media, what you call corporate media sites. I know some people who continue to make a point to pay attention to what they're saying, in sort of the general consensus theme behind that seems to be they want to know what they, for lack of a better blanket term, what the left, what other people are hearing from mainstream media, so that they won't get too lost and they'll have something to talk about. Do you do that, or do you advocate for it?
Well, I don't list any of the corporate media sites on concernedcitizen.io. They spent plenty of money and they have plenty of exposure. They don't need my help. So I don't list them. I wouldn't discourage anybody from watching or listening or reading them. But I think that in a lot of cases, what you'll find, especially once you've got an opportunity to engage with other non-corporate media sites and publications, is you'll become less inclined to spend much time being engaged with corporate media, because they're not trying to inform you. they're I say that, and I think I have to temper that just a little bit. I don't think the corporate media is completely unreliable in every way. I think you can, if they say if there's a weather broadcast and they say it's raining right now, and you can look out the window and say, yeah, it is raining. They'll be honest about things like that. I think, with local news, they can be honest, like with that, just reporting statistics and sports and stuff like that. I think they can be, relatively honest. It's really in the areas of politics that they have taken a position, and rather than acknowledging it and saying, yeah, we're biased, we're definitely on the side, one side or the other. They act like they're not, and so you have to kind of figure out that they're not. It's just unfortunate that they do that, but it becomes very apparent once you have the ability to contrast what you're learning, what they're saying, to what other outlets are saying. And when you're watching or reading corporate media, it's funny because I really started becoming much more engaged in 2016, 2017 with the presidential election that year. I started out being a Ben Carson supporter, ended up being a Trump supporter, and then after he was elected, I was shocked at how it seemed like the media was fomenting people to go out in the street and have riots, to get rid of Trump, who had just been elected. And so I started really seeking out other sources of information, because I didn't understand what was going on and why that was happening. And as I found other sources of information, I would check out corporate media, and what they were saying didn't make sense. Like, I don't get it. Why would people do this or say this according to what they're explaining and their what their reasons are in their broadcasts or articles? Then you find other sources on the non-corporate media, and you read their articles, analysis that's been done by people that write for those publications, and what they say does make sense, So you do enough of that, and you realize that there's not a tremendous amount of value to be gained from watching or spending time with corporate media. But that's up to every individual. That was my experience, and I think it's the experience of a lot of other people. But there's a lot of folks that grown up with PBS or NPR. They really like some of the personalities. They're not going to stop listening to them, but hopefully they will be in a much better position to be able to challenge what they're being told there, and not just accept what they're being told as being honest, just because they say they're being honest. So that's kind of my take on the corporate media.
Kind of a curveball question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Does the what, if anything, does the term red-pilled mean to you?
Well, to me, it is what happened when I started identifying other sources of information, and I tell you how that started. What the seed was there was Twitter. My background is sales and marketing. I understood the value of social media and Twitter as a marketing vehicle, a long time ago. But the companies I was involved in, we weren't really marketing to that base. So it didn't really make sense for us to engage with it that much. So I really wasn't that. I checked it out and I stayed on top of it, but I didn't really engage with it myself. But I started engaging with it and spending a lot more time on it during 2015, 2016. The thing that really opened my eyes to some weird stuff going on was when Hillary Clinton was when the New York Times published research that showed that she had been using a non-governmental server for her emails, and that those emails and communications weren't accessible to the government like they were supposed to be, because I was in the military. I signed a document that said, whatever you create as a member of the military belongs to the U.S. government, and when you leave, you have an obligation to turn all that over because it belongs to the U.S. government. And I signed both the document in the beginning and the document at the end saying that, yeah, I had turned it all over. So I knew that that everybody that works for the government has to sign similar forms. That if Hillary Clinton had done this, that wasn't right. And yet all the corporate media was saying, oh, this is no big deal. This is the Secretary of State. She had access to, our most secret secrets, and was potentially sharing them on unsecured channels. And, from my point of view as a citizen, that was not okay with me. But I watched how the media was just, dismissing any concerns about it, ridiculing people that were concerned about it. And so I thought, well, this doesn't make sense. And at that time, I got a lot of my news from NPR because, I traveled a lot. I really wasn't, hadn't found any podcasts, that I was listening to. And the nice thing about NPR is that if you're driving a lot, you can drive from one community to another and find, the local NPR station, be able to listen to the news. And I always like listening to the news. I know a lot of people like listening to sports and sports analysis, so there's that. NPR is, was more, I liked it because it was available and because, it was nonstop news, and that's what interested me. And what they were saying didn't make a lot of sense. So I went to Twitter and I started seeking out people who were challenging that, what the corporate media was saying. And, what was really cool about Twitter and all social media is the network effect. You connect to one person, and then that one person connects you to other people because they retweet or repost something that they found interesting or true or untrue. Just something they thought it was interesting, and it had their color to it. And from there, you can link to the article. Gosh, this is an article was done by the Federalist. I've never heard of the Federalist before. I want to learn more about them because this writer, Molly Hemingway, as an example, what she's saying makes a lot of sense, you know. So then you end up, it's like a whole new world opens up from these connections. And you know what's interesting too is you do run into people that are insincere, that aren't what they purport themselves to be. But you can figure out who those people are pretty quickly, and then you just disconnect by unfollowing them, and they're not going to bother you anymore, or you're getting away. So as I was making all these networking connections, not that I was interacting personally with these people, but I was interacting with their commentary, their warnings, their concerns, their making of points and so forth, that I found a lot of people that I thought made a lot of sense and struck me as being honest. And so that was my red pill moment. And a lot of those people are people that over the years I found to continue to be very, very credible, that the things that they had analyzed, based on the information that they had available to them, they said, okay, this is what we think is happening. It turns out that they were right in a lot of cases. So that builds their credibility with me. And a lot of those folks are listed in my section called Social Media Influencers and Activists. So that would have been my red pill moment. How about you? What was yours?
Well, it was similar, but probably also distinctly different. My wife and I are very closely aligned. We think a lot alike, and we're actually engaged in many of the same sorts of things. And we looked at all the hype and hoopla and circumstance around Trump. And in 2016, for the first election, I really wasn't backing him. I wasn't buying it. He just seemed like a circus. It was kind of a carnival. And I didn't like that. So I actually did not vote for Trump in 2016. But then I started watching him in office and watching his policies. And he really fairly quickly won me over. And the policies were great. I really enjoyed him. And I was like, here's this guy that came from being kind of a carnival circus act in my book to somebody who was really doing the right things in office that I appreciated. And there were a couple things that really kind of hit my radar in the handling and treatment of Trump in the press. And I think it's very common. A lot of people woke up at just the bizarre, odd treatment of a sitting U.S. president by our media institutions. The write-ups, the press, the social media handling, and the just relentless news video media handling of him. And there was one in particular, I want to say it was that Unite the Right thing. And the media was all over him. He's racist, and he's encouraging these white supremacist neo-Nazis in Charlotte, North Carolina. I think that's where it was.
Charlottesville, Virginia.
Oh, thank you for that correction. I'd forgotten where exactly it was. I didn't watch the event, but I saw the coverage of Trump. And it's like, wow, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's terrible that we have this racist in office. And then I watched the coverage, and then I watched the actual speech that Trump gave, and it was not at all, not a little bit, like as the media was presenting it. I was like, well, wow, this is going to be a serious retraction tomorrow, because they got it so wrong. They got it fundamentally wrong. And when the next day came and the day after, and there was never a retraction, and the press kept going, then I started watching for more, and I saw more and more through the years of, Trump says one thing, and the media presents it an entirely different way. And that led to all sorts of other awareness, like looking at the actions and inactions of the Department of Justice, our judiciary, other politicians, you name it. And so while he has proven to be a lightning rod, he is also directly, I think, responsible for many people having been red-pilled.
Yes. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
So, backing up a step, you were talking about as you built ConcernedCitizen.io. Hint, hint, go there, check it out. It's a cool site. It's lots of great resources. As you built ConcernedCitizen.io, you're, of course, very aware of what happens on search engines, so that your average person out there who might go and look for news on a person or subject or issue is typically going to open up a browser on their phone or their computer and start searching for that. I do think that there are a growing number of people who are aware that Google is in my book, they're compromised. They're very compromised because I've listened to the congressional and Senate hearings illustrating how they're compromised. But what, if anything, do you do to overcome that steering toward the left that happens in some browsers?
Well, it's something that I recognize is going to be a problem right from the get-go, because a lot of the news sites and analysts and influencers are downranked, when you search for them on Google or Edge or other search engines. I'm not going to complain about that. I know it's reality. I think eventually we'll overcome that, by having a sheer volume of people going to the website, because, the web crawlers do recognize sites that have value, that are visited and so forth, and that will move us up even against, their algorithms to suppress us. But so what's got to come first, in that chicken and egg scenario is visitors. And so my strategy to drive traffic to the website, just for people to see it for the first time and then hopefully appreciate the value, is to meet with people in person, to go to events and hand out cards with a QR code on it, so it'll take you directly to the website if that's how you want to get there. To engage with other people that are influential, like yourself, there's other people that I've reached out to that have responded, very positively, and I've asked them to, repost, some of my tweets, and I'm posting daily, either a news site or an organization or an influencer or an article. I've written a couple of blog posts. I do that once a day to all the social media sites, and then I ask people to if you like it, please share it with your friends and family and coworkers and other people that you think could benefit from it. And that's the main reason I'm going to America's Fest this weekend. Is there's a lot of people there that are very influential, and I want to introduce them to the website. And if they see value in it, I'd like to ask them to help me spread the word. So I think that the feedback I've gotten so far, the site's only been live for about a month and a half. It has been overwhelmingly extremely positive. I can see traffic building through analytics. Some days are better than others, but definitely it's building, and I've got a pretty good amount of time spent on the website. People how long they spend on the website before they log off, and so I think that there's a lot there that people that are in a position of being influential can appreciate and buy into. And of course, the people that I'm asking for their help are people who I respect, people who I think a lot of other people respect. And these are people I respect because I think that they're somewhat selfless. I mean, everybody has to make a living, so I don't begrudge anybody for, having advertising on their website or pitching products and stuff like that. You have to have revenue in order to continue to build. I'm paying for this myself, but there's going to be a limit to how much I can do. And at some point I'm going to need to, add advertising to the site so that I can hire people and have them make the site better and so forth. But, I don't think that the people that I respect as influencers need to be paid to spread the word if they see that this is something of value, because most of the people that I respect and who I would talk to are very active in the political community in terms of either putting themselves out there and taking, and being, very open and honest, and being willing to take the swings and arrows that are going to come at them. And also I see that they're working hard. They're going to lots of meetings, or, they are supporting things that will help get more people activated. And this is just one more tool that they didn't have before. And I hope that they'll see that, recognize that, and want to help me get the word out.
Awesome. I love it. So a question toward that end, and you think about ultimately what concernedcitizen.io looks like. Do you envision having any unique content, or will it remain indefinitely as what I refer to as kind of an aggregator? You're putting together sources in one easy to find source.
I think, the most successful products, the most successful programs, the most successful endeavors are always simple. So my goal would be that whatever I do to concernedcitizen.io doesn't complicate it, and makes it simple for people to recognize what they'll find when they get there, how it can be useful to them, and how to other people that they go there and get and connect to information and organizations and events there as well. So for the very near future, that's what I'm going to kind of stay focused on, is that. But what's interesting is that I can keep adding to those those basic categories. And one category I neglected to mention is political party organizations, because and I just want to bring that up very quickly, because that was one of the things that inspired me to do this website. I during the Trump years, his first term, I spent a lot of time trying to understand how I can make a difference or have an impact to have positive things happen, through social media, and it's very, very difficult, is for an individual to have much of an impact that way. I'm more of a retweeter than I am an original, tweeter. So I could help people by sharing their content, but I don't know that I was necessarily making a lot of a difference. And what I saw happening over time is that it seemed like, the shadow banning thing was happening, and so I was kind of like treading water. So before the 2020 presidential election, I reached out to Ben Carson's campaign to see if I can volunteer for that. I'm not 2020. During the 2016 election, I reached out to Ben Carson, and nobody from the Ben Carson campaign got back to me. So I never got a chance really to work with them. And I'm not a political person. I'm a concerned citizen. I mean, the name of the website describes how my own self-image is. I'm a concerned citizen. I'm not a political animal. And so I didn't know, how do I get involved? And so in 2020, I donated to Trump, and there was a spot on the donation form that says, if you want to volunteer, check this box and somebody will contact you. So I checked it, just like I did the Ben Carson one 4 years before. But this time somebody did reach out to me. He was a local North Carolina GOP employee, activist, who trained me on making phone calls, and I went to meetings, and I wanted to do as much as I possibly could to help. But they just kind of relegated me to making phone calls, which I did that, made hundreds of phone calls. But then the election went the way it did, and then I really wanted to step up my involvement, and I wasn't sure how. But I learned about the precinct strategy from a podcast that I really do like a lot, and that's Steve Bannon's War Room. And one of the reasons I like the War Room so much is, I've learned a lot of new people, a lot of new influencers and thinkers and writers and authors and politicians from guests that he had on. And one of the things that I like about what he does is at the end of every engagement that he has, he asks people to tell him how to reach them, what their social media is and stuff like that, which is awesome. And so that happened with the precinct strategy, and Dan Schultz was interviewed. This was like in January of 2021. And so I bought Dan's, I went to Dan's website, I bought his book. I read it, right away, and started trying to implement it by getting involved in my local precinct. It was really, really interesting, that my local county Republican Party, even though I was very clearly interested in doing more for them and with them, they didn't really give me many opportunities. But the fact that there was this outlet for precinct engagement that I learned about from Dan Schultz and precinct strategy, I applied that. But it was very difficult even to find out, how do I become a precinct? How do I get engaged with my precinct? Who is my local precinct chairman? There's nowhere to find that stuff, at least not in Davidson County, North Carolina. So, I overcame that. It took a lot of work, and I finally, learned, and this was important too. This came from the precinct strategy. Dan said in one of his chapters, you need to find out when the conventions are and go to the convention. And that's what I did. And at that convention, there was only 4 people from my precinct, the 2 people that were outgoing, and then 2 people that were interested in getting involved, myself and one of my neighbors. I didn't know her at the time. I just met her there. And so I became chairman. She became vice chairman of our precinct, and off we went, So I told the guys from my, how difficult, I told the people from Davidson County Republican Party how difficult it was for me to learn. And I felt like we were missing a huge opportunity to make it easy for people to get information to how to get involved and get engaged. So one of the things that I've done with ConcernedCitizen.io is, for the state of North Carolina, every county Republican Party has a listing that I personally had to create. And some of those counties have a lot of information, others don't have much information, but at least you can go to my website and find your local county Republican Party very quickly. And then I want to do the same thing for like men's clubs, women's clubs, on and on and on. Add all of them to this, and that I think can be very beneficial to people, because ultimately, I don't think everybody wants to get involved in politics, and not everybody wants to be a precinct chairperson or volunteer. They may be a lot more comfortable, working for an organization that's focused on election integrity or something, and you can find those on my website. But if you want to get involved in your local Republican Party, then my website should be the place to go.
Excellent. So sometimes it seems like things come sort of full circle. I mentioned earlier that some of the audio from a Twitter space that I'm technically officially hosting, but I've stepped away so that you and I have a chance to speak. Some of the audio snuck in. Well, the co-host on that happens to be Dan Schultz. Dan Schultz and I do that together twice a week. So obviously, I am clearly very much on board with that objective of getting information out about things like precinct strategy and ways for people to move from simply being concerned citizen to being informed citizen and being active and engaged citizen, because that is ultimately what makes a beautiful, wonderful country for all of us to live in. Yes.
I tell people that I meet, because now I'm active locally in the Republican Party, they'll say, why are you involved? What do you hope to get out of this? And I say, well, I think the country is gotten off track. I think that we've got a lot of problems, and they're my fault. And people will look at me and say, well, come on, how can it be your fault? So, well, I outsourced my responsibilities as a citizen to politicians that lied to me and didn't represent me. And that's not their fault necessarily. It's my fault, because I allowed that to happen. Because I think that, every effort to make a change has to start with accepting responsibility for the current situation. And so I accept that responsibility. And so having accepted that responsibility means that it's going to be much easier for me to do what's necessary to get involved. And I think a lot of other people, hearing that can relate to that, because until, we've become red-pilled and our eyes have been opened to how things aren't right, we outsourced our responsibilities. And I guess you can do that if the people that you outsource responsibilities to actually serve you, actually do what they say they're going to do and perform as they say they're going to. But, they haven't, there's evidence in so many different ways, how I'm sorry, my Siri is talking to me. No, what happened? But, so I got knocked off track, and so I forgot my point.
That's all right. In order to give you a moment, give you a breather to come back to that, maybe the thought will come back into your mind. I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
I won't fault you if you don't answer this, because you want people to come and visit your site and come and just sort of peruse what's there and available. But when it comes to, I don't even call them alternative news sites anymore, but just real news sources, do you have any favorites?
Epoch Times, I think, is one of the best, especially from a broadsheet standpoint and very wide range. You can get a lot of information from Epoch Times, and I do feel like I get that too.
I've got mine here. I just pulled it out of the mailbox earlier today. Sorry,
yeah.
I interrupted.
I think that's one of the best. And you get information there about culture, about society, about sports, the environment, and as a part of what they offer, they also have Epoch TV, where they produce and provide lots of documentaries and so forth. So I think that's a great one. I mentioned the Federalist before. I really like the Federalist a lot. They're not necessarily a news site. They're focused on is analysis and investigations, but I think they're honest. I think they're very honest, and the information that you get from there is going to be real. From a podcast standpoint, I think number one has got to be the War Room. I've been listening to the War Room for a long time, and I get a lot out of it. Again, because of how they're structured, by bringing in a wide variety of people from lots of different segments of society and responsibilities and goals that they have, and then giving you a way to connect with them, learn more about them. So I've learned a tremendous amount there, and I've been inspired from there too, because the mantra there is action, action, action. And I've always believed in that. So I can connect to that really well. And that's, kind of what I'm doing with that. So, I think those would be the ones that would pop to my mind the fastest. There's a lot of others. There's independent journalists. There's quite a few. There's Jonathan Turley. I listened to one of his articles the other day. I think he's very honest. He's not always going to come down on the side that I want to see win. He may feel from his background and knowledge that shouldn't be the case. So he makes a case for his position, and that of course is very informative. But I think he's terrific. Matt Taibbi is a liberal, and I distinguish between liberals and leftists. I think, to me, a synonym for leftist would be communist, socialist, whereas a synonym for liberal would be, maybe intellectual. It might be, somebody who believes in freedom and so forth. So I think that that's an important distinction. In any case, he is definitely not, right of center or center. He's on the left side of that. but I think he comes from a very honest standpoint. Same thing with Glenn Greenwald, and others like that you'll find on concernedcitizen.io.
So one last thing I'd like to close with, and then this has been a wonderful conversation, and I hope that
appreciate it.
In the future, you and I have continued opportunity to speak together as things grow and evolve. But that has to do with the term extremist. So it occurs to me, in my perception, that a number of otherwise useful terms in the English language have been subverted and altered disproportionately. And so in the past, we have used terms, very important, fundamental, critical terms in English, like racist or extremist or xenophobic, Islamophobic. We've used them cautiously and for a very specific purpose. It clearly seems to me that over the past few years, those terms have been weaponized and become so overused that now they've sort of lost meaning, and we've lost connection with that. So when we look at the things that you and I are describing that are seeking truth, that aren't trying to put the political bias into it, or oftentimes if they do, they're honest about it. The handle, the mantra that seems to be much of it is extremist. Like, people want to point at these things, the news sources that you mentioned, Epoch Times, for instance, and call it extremist. So do you have any thoughts about how we counter that and get more people aware of and interested and open to the idea of exploring such sources?
Yeah, and that kind of leads me to one of the things I'm frustrated about our current situation in the country, is that, you know, those terms like that are used in a manner that's very psychological, that's very manipulative, and in order for people to really be in a good position to respond to those either accusations of, you know, themselves or the people that they, you know, might associate with, I think it's very important for people to be educated on how those terms, based on the circumstances, situations in which they're used, how they're being used in a way that's meant to influence and manipulate you and the people that are in that area that may overhear that conversation. So I think, you know, the Republican Party, you know, should be taking the lead on educating people, because I don't think for the most part they really use those types of psychological tools the way that the left does. But the left has been using it very effectively because, you know, people don't really understand exactly where it's coming from. And I think most people are very inclined to first, you know, look in the mirror and go, yeah, he said I was a racist or an extremist, and go look in the mirror and say, am I? You know, what did I do? Versus recognizing it as a tool of manipulation and saying, no, I'm not a racist. I'm not an extremist. So recognizing it for what it is, that's a very important thing. People need to have that education to be able to defend themselves. Our opponents, and I won't say that they are our enemies, because I love our country and I love the people that live in this country, and I believe that most, like 90+% of the people that, you know, live in this country are really good people, and I don't think that we have a lot of differences in terms of our broad goals of, you know, loving our family, loving our you know, having a desire to provide for our family and leave something of substance when we leave. So, and so it's the people that we disagree with, I refer to them as our opponents. Some of our opponents have learned how to use manipulative tools. People like Saul Alinsky was a great educator on the left that taught people how to use it. And we don't spend enough time on the other side, the side that I've identified with, disseminating those tools so that people understand how they're being used. So I think that my answer is they're tools of manipulation. In most cases, when those words are used, they're used to try to make people to shut down discussions and make people defensive, and and ideally to our opponents, take them out of the scenario, take them out of the arena, so they're not participating anymore. And that happens a lot because people don't understand exactly what's happening. But that's one of the things by getting red pill that you learn from other people, what's going on. But I think the people that are donating a lot of money to the Republican Party and to causes on the right would serve themselves and us very well by focusing more of their spending on education. Places like Prager University, PragerU, is listed on my website as one of the organizations, and it's a great organization for people to go to learn. And also, they're always looking for help from people to contribute so they can get their message out to a wider audience. So those are things that we individually can go to, but I think that there's really a huge need, from the top down. Instead of spending money on trying to get unelectable people elected, spend money on helping to educate our fellow citizens on the tools that are used to manipulate us so that we become more knowledgeable about that. And I think it would make us better and better able to advocate for our positions.
I agree. So I'm going to leave with this. If you're not already aware of Patrick Wood's organization, Citizens for Free Speech, they have a group, or it's actually a series of programs that they call Citizen Ninja, and they teach on how to identify and isolate propaganda. So it's Citizens for Free Speech. They have all sorts of resources and training and tools. Patrick Wood is the gentleman that founded it, and some of his leadership, actually 2 people on his leadership team, including conservative radio personality Bob France, kind of a personal friend, great group of people who are doing a lot to get information out about the propaganda that happens. And they even isolate it in news broadcasts and teach you how to select that out and know when you're being propagandized. So maybe that's an introduction I need to make. I introduce you to Patrick Wood and the group over at Citizens for Free Speech. Vince, this has been spectacular. Thank you so much for joining me today and all you're doing. It's wonderful, the work you're doing at Concerned Citizen.
Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for having me on here. I'm inspired by what you're doing with your UnWoke Academy and UnWoke investing, as well as things that are going to be happening with Second Vote. So I'm so glad that we met. I hope that we can stay close and get a lot of things done together.
Hoorah! I love it. Sounds like a plan.
All right.
Vince, thanks.